Hello everybody, welcome back to ABA with Dr. D. This is our series on diversity and behavior analysis. And today I want to share with you a phenomenal article that I found. It's called A Summary of the Recommendations to Increase Cultural Responsiveness in the Field of Applied Behavior Analysis by Sarah Christensen. This was published in the International Electronic Journal of Elementary Education, January 2023, Volume 15, Issue 3, 233 through 35. This article is great. I honestly was looking around to see what other articles we can review in this particular series that we have currently happening. And I basically stumbled across this particular article, and I read the abstract. I'm gonna go ahead and read it for you guys, and I just was like, okay, I got to read this, and you'll see why. So let me start with the abstract. So the abstract says cultural contingencies help shape the development of an individual's repertoire. Researchers within the field of behavior analysis have, within the past decade, reiterated the importance of connecting behavioral principles to a client's natural practices. The incorporation of cultural preferences within behavioral services is paramount to the effectiveness and sustainability of those services. The present paper summarizes the guidance of researchers for practitioners beginning to develop this repertoire and apply it to their clinical practice. This paper begins by acknowledging that the foundation of the field of applied behavior analysis set the stage for understating how cultural considerations make the field applied. Different themes related to increasing the cultural responsiveness of the field are summarized by reviewing the supporting literature. The research is further summarized into guiding the principles for practitioners as they begin to sharpen this skill. The paper ends with a call for scientists, practitioners, and researchers to capture data related to culturally responsive service provisions to inspire efforts in empirical evaluation of the recommendations provided. So a lot of different things here. I'm going to go ahead and get a little closer that are mentioned in this particular article. And the introduction is pretty cool. I like right here how they define the culture and how that's such an essential part of behavior analysis. They say culture is a backbone of the science of behavior analysis. Differentiation in cultures form as a result of interactions between individuals, which result in specific repertoire being shaped by social consequences. Glenn, 2004. These interactions are responsible for a large portion of human learning, and the combination of consequences over time within a specific context is what makes a culture unique. Okay. Here it further says that understanding the existing cultural repertoires of a family, community, or social group gives a behavior analyst a starting point to develop a client-centered intervention plan, which is something that we've been talking about in the previous segments on diversity, that we really do need to do, put some effort understanding cultures, understanding where our clients' background is, and that'll help us have a lot more success with our clients. I move on here. It says that the recent adoption of the new ethics code for behavior analysts, referred to as the ethics code hereafter, outlines that incorporating cultural considerations into clinical practice is not only recommended but required if a certified behavior analyst is in compliance with this code, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, BACB 2020. Arango Analytic identifies specific areas within the ethics code that pertain to cultural responsiveness. Within the core principles section, the code requires the equitable treatment of clients and stakeholders, regardless of factors such as age, disability, ethnicity, gender expression, identity, immigration status, marital relationship status, national origins, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or any other basis prescribed by law. Okay, so just emphasizes, reiterates that it is our duty as behavior analysts, people that are practicing in this field, to also adhere to this particular part of the ethical guideline. The same themes are reflected in the ethical guidelines for members of the American Psychological Association, or APA, and the American Occupational Therapy Association. So something that's very relevant, very much in tune with other fields. And I'm very happy now to see that our field of behavior analysis has this incorporated in the ethical guidelines. It did not before 2020. It was not as clear. Now it is very clear that it's something that's needed for our behavior analysts to look at. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this paper is about. So it says this paper will reflect on the foundations of applied behavior analysis, or ABA, and how those who were present during the field's inception set the precedent for exploring this important issue, which is something I'm going to talk about. Social significance. We'll see now that a little bit more in the next section for the Bear, Wolf, and Risley article from 1968 and 1978 too. They're going to talk a little bit more about how that part, social significance, is also in tune with the cultural diversity part that we need to first continue educating ourselves with. Further, main themes and recommendations surrounding cultural responsiveness will be outlined with supporting articles identified for each theme, which you're going to see is something really cool that they did a table. They broke down specifically the theme and also like the type of article that pertains to that theme, so that people like yourself that's listening to this particular lesson, and people like myself who want to learn more, all of us that want to learn more about this can have a pretty clear trajectory to get into that particular, to find these particular resources that can help us get more information. Here it says a review of the few empirical demonstrations of developing a culturally responsive repertoire will be discussed, and recommendations for future researchers will be given. Finally, the recommendations of some of the most cited articles which focus on cultural considerations will be combined to give practitioners guiding principles as they begin developing this repertoire. So it's really awesome, really exciting to see that once again is the focus here. Here they're just going to define a little bit more about the different types of words that we use in regards to like the cultural diversity aspect that are going to be used. Basically, these words are going to be used very commonly in this article. So here they say cultural responsiveness will be used when discussing overall incorporation of family preferences, values, and cultures into clinical work, and when referring to verbal behavior surrounding one's own biases and how this might affect practice, the term cultural awareness will be used. Cultural humility, one of my favorite ones by the way, will refer to the ongoing development and improvement of an individual's cultural awareness. Okay. So here in this section, and once again, you should read this article. It's phenomenal. It's a great article. It's going to talk a little bit more about the origins of ABA, which goes back to the Bear, Wolf, and Risley article on those dimensions of behavior analysis. Here, this is the table I was going to talk about. These are the common terms used in discussion of cultural responsiveness in human services, behavior analysis, and the medical field. They provide the term, the definition, and the references. So I'm going to start with the first one. So culture. Here they say that culture is the extent to which a group of individuals engage in overt and verbal behavior reflecting shared behavioral learning histories, serving to differentiate the group from other groups, and predicting how individuals within the groups act in specific setting conditions. Okay, Suga et al. 2012 is where this was taken from. Cultural sensitivity, another really key, once again, term and concept, recognizing and embracing differences between the practitioner's cultural background and that of their client, understanding how this background can create biases and working these realizations into clinical practice and interaction. This process takes place both at individual and organization-wide level, which is so key for those that have that work for behavior analytic organizations or own behavior analytic organizations. Very crucial for that they're going to provide some recommendations of what you could do at an organizational level to be able to start providing more cultural sensitivity training and cultural awareness training for the team that you're with. This term is often used to reflect verbal behavior that attacks cultural differences as well as over behaviors that incorporate accommodations for those differences in service provision. Okay, and have the different references here for you. Cultural competence is the repertoire behaviors, policies, and values that are combined within an organization to allow professionals to work effectively across culturally diverse situations. Okay, this really is a goal for us, by the way, cultural competence. This term is often used to describe the group of actions that an individual organization has taken to create systematic change. When discussed, authors describe culturally competent organizations as those that impact large community systems by creating policy change, system changes, and advocating for disadvantaged populations. Okay, this term has not been used recently to reflect an individual's behavior as it conveys an idea of reaching a level of mastery. Okay, this once again is a goal for all of us, is to have that cultural competence. Cultural awareness, often described as verbal behavior, an individual can detect the difference between their cultural backgrounds and that of their clients, and can also name the ways that these two backgrounds may be different and how those differences can affect services. Cultural and linguistic diversity, the social cultural differences between groups that may control verbal behavior. Cultural humility describes ongoing process of evaluating and modifying one's own behavior following interactions with individuals of backgrounds different than one's own. Continuously increasing openness to different viewpoints, the process of continuously improving upon one's own cultural awareness. Cultural responsive teaching, incorporating the diverse experiences of both the student and faculty population into a program's curriculum to ensure equitable educational experience for all students regardless of background. Cultural reciprocity, the process of evaluating ongoing interaction between individuals of differing cultures, making changes and compromises in line with each party's values as needed. Cultural responsiveness, the process of collaboration with the clients and stakeholders to ensure intervention is reflective of the client's values and goals. Involves combining a cultural awareness repertoire with actively listening to the values and preferences of clients. Culturally and contextually relevant, used when discussing educational curricula and materials, and describes designing these supports to ensure that each student can experience the maximum amount of benefit from what is developed and taught. Okay, very cool to see these particular terms put here for us. Much love and appreciation for this, because this really is something that I've noticed in our diversity-based content and articles we've been reading. These are very common words or terms that we're seeing. It's just good to have some of these definitions here again. And this is something that I truly love from this article. It gives you literally the area of interest, and it tells you what it is that they're targeting and what particular articles they recommend for you to look at. So for example, if I'm interested in developing one's own culturally responsive repertoire, here's a list of articles I should read. If I'm interested in developing culturally responsive educational and organizational systems, here are the articles. Cultural considerations in supervisory relationships, here's one article. Guidance for cultural sensitivity in family interactions, assessment, and protocol development, here's a list of articles here. Cultural considerations in research procedures, here's a set of articles. Commentaries on culture and behavior analysis, and here's the articles for that. So really awesome. I am definitely going to read these articles, and I'm more than likely going to be sharing them with you too. So if you want to follow along with that journey to make sure that we're basically checking off on these articles that we need to read to be able to learn more about cultural responsiveness. Okay. All right, so I move on. So here I go back to the Bear, Wolf, and Risley situation. So here it says that Bear and colleagues describe what's the set of signs of behavior analysis apart from similar ones is it is applied nature, which aims to make behavioral changes that are significant for the learner in their natural environment. An efficient and collaborative way of determining the importance of goals is to discuss them in collaboration with the client and take into consideration the client's specific context and the ongoing contingencies that will support whether the goals are likely to maintain. So once again, we got to zone in to our client's specific environments to see what it is that's going on there so we can be able to successfully help them out. Culturally aware practitioners demonstrate this dimension by understanding the variables within a client's environment that sustain behaviors and might support behavior change. So once again, we really want to focus on that, because if we're tackling and we're working on something that is relevant to the family and important to the caregivers, more than likely it's something that's going to be maintained, right? And that's really crucial. A big mistake that we're going to see later on is when behavior analysts don't do that, and we come in with our own assumptions and we start trying to make programs and recommendations that are not in tune with the family's overall values and cultural practices. Here it says that the importance of Bear and colleagues in 1968 and 1987 placed on social significance in ABA has not recently been reflected in the field's published work. Ferguson and colleagues 2018 conducted a review of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis that assessed whether studies evaluate social significance in research by collecting measures of social validity. The results indicated that from 1999 to 2004, only between 3 to 7% of articles assessed for social validities in some form. This number increased only slightly from 2007 to 2016, with an average of 13% of articles reporting social validity measures. Social validity to me is very important, right? And I think that it's obviously, in tune with how do the families feel about what we're doing? How do they really take our services? And if our companies, our organizations are not doing that, then that's something that is not fulfilling that dimension when it comes to, the whole aspect of the dimensions of behavior analysis, okay, of behavior. This lack of focus on input from client stakeholders could lead, and I'm going to go here, to the non-behavior analytic community to believe that ABA has strayed from its original intention of putting clients at the center of services. Okay. The potential stray from incorporating client preferences and cultural differences into practice may stem from an overgeneralization of the understanding that behavioral principles are universally applicable. This might mean that practitioners create goals based on responses they see as socially concerning, but do not follow through by discussing these goals with the individual or the family, which is a big mistake. The goal is targeted because the analyst is confident that the behavior can be changed given the universal principles of behavior. Okay, so a lot of it stems from that our confidence that we can change any behavior in the world. But the problem with that is that we're totally ignoring or not putting attention to the fact that we do need to incorporate people that are going to help us support these changes. A culturally responsive program would take this same approach and incorporate a family's priorities and existing repertoires intervention in building skills from there. Okay, Goldheim in 1974. Now we talked a little bit demographics here. So this is something I talked about in the past. So here it just reiterates that the most recent United States Census reflects the rapidly changing demographics of the country. The 2020 census estimates that non-white individuals make up 38.4% of the country's population. This was according to the United States Census Bureau of 2022. This is nearly 9% increase from the previous decade's data. It is an enormous increase from the census conducted in 1970, soon after the release of Baer and colleagues' 1968 seminal publication, which put an emphasis on goal relevance for clients. The 1970 census reported that the individuals of color represented only 12.6% of the total population. This according to Singer 2022. This is especially important given the mismatch between the racial makeup of the United States with the racial makeup of certified behavior analysts, with only 21.5% of BCBA or BCBD certificates identifying as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Okay, so very concerning. Once again, something that I hope that as a field we're going to be able to see changes, but there is for sure a difference in regards to the people making the decision in our field and the makeup actually of the racial makeup of the people that we're serving. Okay, it is the racials are not matching at this point. In response to this cultural shift, other fields have started to prioritize cultural responsiveness training for early professionals. The field of behavior analysis is just beginning to accomplish the same training for professionals implementing the science, okay, which is good. We want to see that. Okay, so we're going to start with the recommendation section. So they always start with the self, right? Basically understanding your own biases. That's probably the most important thing. So here it just says that you want to start evaluating your own cultural background and biases. Okay, practitioners can evaluate their own competencies by reflecting on interactions with families, determining the appropriateness of those interactions, and making decisions about whether the relationship is a good cultural fit or if a colleague might better serve the client. Okay. A practitioner could review notes with the mentor they rely on for developing a culturally responsive repertoire. Determining whether interactions are improving in terms of cultural responsiveness should be assessed by checking in with families and asking whether language use, family education strategies, and recommendations are in line with their preferences. So social validity, okay, that's once again really important. Okay, we want to make sure we're always checking in and conducting those social validity questionnaires and checking in with families. Identifying biases could also include a practitioner covertly labeling any assumptions that are made before and after interactions with potential clients. For example, when first arriving to a family's home, the practitioner can ask themselves how the neighborhood the clients live in, the vehicle they see in the driveway, or even the report written by the diagnosing physician is influencing their assumptions about a family. Attacking these assumptions and recognizing them as biases might lead to differences in over behaviors displayed during interactions with the family. Okay, so we can start working with ourselves once again on identifying these things. In a brief example, a clinician who grew up eating dinner in a dining room at a table with at least one other family member with sparse back and forth conversation might assume that a family's goal of eating a meal together takes place in the family home in a similar manner. However, the family they're working with may have a full schedule, and the ideal exemplar of eating a meal together for this family commonly resembles going to a busy restaurant, engaging in loud conversation, and laughing together at the end of the day. Martin Rodriguez, 2022, warned that families might be hesitant to offer goals counter to the behavior analyst recommendation because the behavior analyst is seen as the expert, and the families would not want to risk losing clinical support. So a lot of families might actually be intimidated to say no to you. Because once again, they're saying no to an expert and they have a fear that they may lose your support. Okay, so it's good to put that in perspective, right? Sometimes we don't think about these things, but you know, families might be thinking that way. That's why they might be saying yes to you every single time you're presenting ideas and programs. Fong and colleagues 2016 eloquently outline ideas of how professionals can embark upon this process. A sampling of these ideas includes discussing diverse client interactions with mentors or in small professional groups to gain feedback. Fong and colleagues remind us that the self-reflection and talking about one's own behavior can help bring awareness to interactions that may have been inappropriate. Okay, so it's really good to talk about these things out loud. Okay, Gatzunes et al. 2022 provided similar recommendations to those supervising mentees of diverse cultural background. Gatzunes and colleagues offer a comprehensive checklist that supervisors can use for self-evaluation. The checklist, called the Culturally Responsive Supervision Self-Assessment, or CRSS tool, reminds supervisors to self-reflect on how individual biases may influence interaction. The tool combines the cultural background of the supervisor, the supervisee, and the clients being served to make a respectful interaction for all parties more likely. So pretty awesome here. They're recommending actually a checklist that you can use as a supervisor to see, right? You know, how you're scoring in this particular area. The second section talks about creating culturally responsive systems. So several papers have emphasized the importance of beginning to teach cultural awareness at the inception of behavior analytic careers. So your behavior technicians or people starting off in this field can do this. Training cultural responsiveness from the beginning of a behavior analyst's familiarity with the field would support simultaneously learning the importance of cultural identity and that behavioral principles are universally applicable. So you can teach both, right? But you're also teaching that cultural part. All right. Martha and Rodriguez 2021 provide specific components that could be involved in the implementation of a culturally responsive curriculum. The curriculum outlines competencies that are specific to client interactions, such as creating treatment goals as a result of collaboration with the family. Also included are repertoires that reach beyond the impact that a clinician can have on a single family. Mather and Rodriguez 2021 suggests behavior analysts engage in educational events specifically focused on cultures within their community. Further actions to help develop equitable supports for individuals with disability within their communities are outlined as competencies. These actions include outreach to local pediatricians, collecting data on referral demographics, and actively advocating for those experiencing oppression. Okay, so these are some things that, supervisors can do. People, once again, that are interested in learning more, how to learn more about their own clients in the community they serve. These are things they can do. Another one that I kind of think about now, it's also maybe attending, it's festivals like the Autism Walks or any type of events like that where there's, families that are showing up from the communities. That's another great way to also support and be involved with that process. Next section is cultural considerations in supervisory relationships. So once a behavior analyst enters the workforce, the responsibility of continuing to develop a culturally aware skill set lies with the individual, their supervisors, mentors, and the organization that employs them. Additionally, it is a supervisor's responsibility to understand the differences between their own as well as the supervisor's cultural background. Gatzunes and colleagues 2022 outlined the importance of culturally responsive supervision and developed previously mentioned tools that could be used during a supervisory relationship to evaluate whether the guidance of the mentor is sensitive to the background of both the supervisee as well as the individuals receiving services. Okay, so they give you more tools there to be able to use to understand these things. Here it says that when supervising, it is also required the supervisor incorporate topics related to diversity, equity, inclusion into supervision experiences. Further, it is supervisor's responsibility to ensure that their mentees are familiar with the current ethical code, BACB 2020. This holds the supervisor responsible for contributing to the development of their mentees' own cultural awareness. So supervisors out there, BCB is out there providing supervision. Make sure to put some type of curriculum there, some type of content that your supervisees can be able to watch, read, listen to. That'll help also develop their own skills, specifically for this part, which is the cultural sensitivity and cultural awareness. Here's some more. This is the next section, guidance for protocol and assessment development. So following information gathering, clinicians should ensure that the goals selected for intervention are aligned with the values of the client as well as the stakeholders are appropriate given the client's context, workplace, community, and family dynamic. Fawcett, 1991. So something I was talking about earlier. We want to make sure that our goals are in tune with the environment, right, where the client comes from. If a client or family disagrees with the clinician regarding the implementation of protocol that would be detrimental to the client's ultimate goal, practitioners should take the time to discuss these contingencies collaboratively. In an example, if a client is hesitant to begin an intervention to decrease facial skin picking in public settings but has an ultimate goal of going on a few successful dates, the clinician could discuss interaction between the proposed goal and the ultimate goal to give the client more context regarding the clinician's recommendations. So I'll be patient and also talking to the families, or in this case the client, about why these particular recommendations could benefit them and why they're also in tune in a way with their overall goals. Determining whether the program will sustain should be a key factor in considering whether it should be started. So that's a really good question that all supervisors and all people that are doing programming, even behavior technicians, should ask themselves: is what I'm doing, is that sustainable? Is that something that can last for a long time? Or is this something that I'm just doing just for the moment? I'm just putting a band-aid right now and it's just for the moment. And the goal, honestly, for behavior analytic programs should be that sustainability, that maintenance part, right? Okay. Moving on to the next section is implementing culturally responsive strategies at an organizational level, which is really good. This is a good one right here. Not to say that the other ones are not good, but this one's also one that really hits the mark in regards to organizations. Fong and Tanaka, 2013, provide focused recommendations for how behavior analytic organizations can support the effort to increase cultural responsiveness of the field. These standards, let me go here, include practices to support diversification of the workforce by mentoring and supporting candidates from diverse backgrounds. So companies out there, it's good to assess your overall level of diversity, right? And if you don't have a diverse group, you might need to address that, right? And that's something that is part of the recommendations that they have here. Recommendations for workplace activities such as ongoing training and clearly stated goals surrounding culturally responsive efforts were suggested. Okay, so the ongoing training is still there. One recommendation Fong and Tanaka provide that has been echoed through clinical research publications is that demographic data surrounding the cultural and ethnic makeup of individuals an organization serves are imperative to capture. So it's good to know what demographic, what is the primary demographic that we are serving. It is good to know that, because then that can help us once again, create curriculum and also diversify more, so that we can have an opportunity to serve a more diverse population and also diverse. It can provide opportunities for our practitioners to have experiences with diverse populations. Okay, Fong and Tanaka's recommendations to ensure that staff at all levels and across all disciplines receive ongoing education and training in culturally and linguistically appropriate service delivery would mean a giant organizational shift for those who do not already have similar systems in place. Okay, this can mean that an organization begins by adding culture-specific content or trainings to already scheduled meetings. After feedback is collected, the organization could plan for future meeting time to increase the training opportunities for their staff. Providing staff with resources and support in this effort should be considered part of the organization's long-term continuing education commitment. So something, once again, that the organization needs to embrace. They need to make it a priority to be able to see this type of change. Okay, so a call for empirical validity. So this is where they talk a little bit more about the research part. Here they say that this is an example actually of how they were able to teach cultural humility or other types of cultural kind of skills that are necessary to serve clients, once again, that are diverse. So here, this is an example. Rohrer et al. 2021 summarized the status of the field of behavior analysis as it relates to compassionate care and suggested a checklist called the Compassion and Collaboration Tool that could be used in guiding practitioner behavior in this area. Compassion and Collaboration Tool was informed by publications that taught compassionate care skills to those within the healthcare and other human service fields. The checklist publication was followed Rohrer and Weiss 2022, who evaluated whether these skills could be taught to pre-certification master students. The researchers delivered behavioral skills training to teach different skill sets outlined by the Compassion and Collaboration Tool. These skill sets included basic skills. So, for example, nodding while listening, providing a positive introduction at the beginning of the interaction, showing interest in the family. So, for example, asking about preferences, incorporating the caregiver's feedback into the intervention, and joining in with the family. For example, providing empathy statements and statements to demonstrate the practitioner will join in the family in therapeutic efforts. Rohrer and Weiss 2022. Rohrer and Weiss had only 4 participants. The results showed excellent progress within the multiple baseline design across skill sets. Okay, so it actually worked. It actually something that we can actually teach. Here's another study. Neely and colleagues 2022 conducted one of the first assessments of culturally responsive curriculum implemented by educators in a classroom setting. The curriculum described observable actions a teacher could make to support a classroom's inclusion of cultural differences. These components include environmental details such as displaying classroom rules in the primary languages of the students and using diverse representations of authors and individuals included in pictorial prompts. Additionally, teacher responses to students were evaluated as whether these responses were in the student's primary language. A multiple approach design evaluated the effects of training on the specific components of the curriculum. All teachers increased the percentage of curriculum components implemented in their classroom following the training, and satisfaction with the curriculum implementation was generally high. Okay, so very cool to see some studies once again on teaching cultural sensitivity and other parts, in this case the compassion side, which is really important, right? Something that is critical for all practitioners. Operationalizing and measuring success. So the ultimate indicator should be intervention sustainability. Families often have a variety of obligations within their daily lives, and practitioners should make sure that intervention is worth the response effort committed. If a family sees the value in the results of an intervention, it is aligned with their values and able to implement it with the resources they have available, the intervention is more likely to be sustainable. Ale Rosales et al. 2022 suggests that clinicians frequently ask themselves, do the people the clinician is working with feel happy about the progress that was made? Are the families involved, and did they participate throughout the process? These questions asked throughout the duration of the intervention can help guide the practitioners as to when revelation adjustments are needed. Okay, so these are the kind of questions that you should be asking if you're having an organization with your social validity questions. These questions can help you assess some of that. Okay, so to ensure that clinician organization's success and cultural responses is not siloed to one demographic, several publications recommend categorizing social validity data collected according to the demographic data of clients. Doing so would allow for satisfaction to be evaluated across client cultural identities to identify areas in which additional training may be needed. Data could also be collected on referrals from other providers or families. This data may be helpful in determining if families or providers of certain cultural backgrounds are recommending an organization's services to others more or less often. Okay, so it's good to kind of get a sense of what particular demographic the families that are answering the questionnaire are from, and then you can be able to assess once again how these particular demographic, if you're actually fulfilling the needs for this particular group, and if you actually need more training, and it's basically good feedback to have. So here it says, for example, asking questions such as, does this program reflect the goal that you and your family prioritizes, or do you feel comfortable implementing all aspects of this program, would be more beneficial in the evaluation of cultural responsiveness when compared to, are you satisfied with the level of behavior decrease or increase, which is a very common type of question that they ask. And I think the organization I work for probably has this particular question. So I think that's something that I myself, now that I read this article, I'm gonna have to make that adjustment. We're gonna have to make that adjustment to how we're asking these particular questions. These surveys should also be prioritized for translation to the family's primary language. Okay, so make it accessible so they can read this very well. Okay, and then they end this particular section with services that incorporate culturally responsive practices give the best chance for family satisfaction and sustained behavior change. Okay, very good. Okay, so in this section, they just talk about guidance for practitioners. So for you specifically, practitioners, you need to continue being a behaviorist, right? The first recommendation is that the guidance from behavior analysts must follow the principles of the science. Above all, it is a duty of practitioners to adhere to the principles of behavior analysis and to be effective. Okay. Here's a bit more. There's several publications that offer guidance in evaluating non-behavioral treatment preferences expressed by families. And some families may do that. They may bring non-behavioral treatments to you, and that's where you're going to need to utilize your own experience and analyze, how these or translate these particular non-behavioral treatment utilizing the principles that we should be trained on. Bowman and colleagues 2021 provide standards for transdisciplinary collaboration that include actions such as acknowledging and avoiding pseudoscientific suggestions. Newhouse, Oysen et al. 2017 guides practitioners through an ethical decision-making matrix that evaluates the use of evidence-based and non-evidence-based treatment. Okay. And then they move on to be flexible. So here it says that sticking to only a prescribed way to conduct a specific intervention is not a practice that reflects cultural responsiveness. Families will rarely be familiar with the behavioral analytic literature, and their confidence in the field's effectiveness will likely not be as strong as their practitioners. Okay. So you're saying that you have to be flexible as much as possible. Okay, developing a repertoire for evaluating and translating the research of other disciplines could help increase the flexibility of practitioners in collaborative intervention efforts with families. Okay, at the end of this collaboration, understanding, once again that we need to make adjustments and adapt our treatment to that particular environment as much as possible. Okay, be humble. Like the song "Be Humble." Nuringer, 1991, gave the first guidance to the field of behavior analysis and the importance of professional humility. Nuringer reminds the field that behavior analysts should be comfortable admitting and correcting mistakes. A humble behaviorist is one that admits ignorance, and this should be applied within the context of cultural humility as well. Okay, Nuringer, 1991. When working with the family who offers a suggestion and practitioners unfamiliar with, they should admit the limitation and acknowledge, Kirby et al., 2022. An appropriate response to the family might be, I'm not well versed in that. Let me do some research and get back to you. Okay, so that should be your answer. You shouldn't be trying to make things up on the spot if you don't know the answer. Okay, it's okay to admit that, we don't know it all. Okay. Slashago 2022 describes culturally responsive behaviors must be trained such that they are sensitive to the constantly changing contingencies and interactions within and across the multiple consumers that we serve. A culture that a practitioner thought they were familiar with might present differently across different families, lending an action to cause of offense. This means that the ultimate goal is not to fully understand a culture, but to be good at graciously admitting mistakes when they occur and acting to correct them. Okay, so very good tips there, very good suggestion there for us. Making sure that we're not, stereotyping and overgeneralizing the stuff that we're learning, from cultures across all families, because each family has their own dynamic. Each family has their own ways of doing things, right? Dennison and colleagues 2019 make a wonderful suggestion to take time and talk about past experiences and hardships that the family has faced as intervention begins. If this type of conversation seems awkward or disingenuous at first, role play with the colleague and solicit feedback on questions or comments that came across inappropriately. Above all, behavior cannot be shaped if it is not admitted. Okay, so it's okay to make mistakes in that process, but it's good to be open to having that communication, that conversation with our families. And if you're not, you feel like you have a skill deficit with that, it's good to practice with your colleagues, okay? Or in this case, your mentor or anyone that can assist you with that, okay? The next one is commit time to the effort, okay? Many have suggested making efforts to understand the diverse cultural backgrounds of families that will be receiving services, which has now been formally incorporated in the updated Ethics Code BACB 2020. Here, and I move on then. Incorporating culturally relevant topics into supervision meetings, listening to podcasts, reading books by authors of a culture that differ from one's own, or following social media accounts that focus on issues and diversity are just a few suggestions that could be incorporated into a practitioner's busy schedule. Okay, so hopefully, once again, those that have been able to stay, by the way, thank you so much. Much love to that are been able to keep along and tag along with this journey as we go through this article. A very long one, but I think it's a good one because it gives you so much information, so many great tools there and suggestions that you can hopefully incorporate in your practice. But hopefully, once again, this particular types of conversations like the one we're having in this particular YouTube channel and this particular segments that we had hopefully a part that you can also incorporate into your supervision resources you have. Okay, if you're working with people that are trying to get their BCBAs, you can, suggest them, once again, these variety of books, podcasts, or once again, this particular, recording that can help them understand a bit more and also get into more with the research that's out there for cultural awareness and stuff that relates to this topic. Additionally, organizations that employ behavior analysts should take time to prioritize this type of training and for self-reflection. Trainings could be offered that educate interventionists and supervisors regarding the unique cultural landscape of a community where a clinic is located. A standing agenda item in supervision meetings could be to discuss the biases that a clinician identified during the sessions that week. Larger companies can identify experts or members of specific cultures who are available to review protocol development. Time during parent training activities could be dedicated to talking with families about family background, previous therapy experiences, or how they have used the procedures that week. So once again, great suggestions there for us. Okay, and the conclusion, I move on here. So different cultures are not always siloed and must work together towards common goals. In this way, the culture behavior analysis interacts with the cultures of the clients that they serve. It is the behavior's responsibility, not the family's, to make changes to allow for behavior analysis to fit into each family's culture. It is understood that the best way to establish lasting change is to build from an already existing repertoire, and a family's culture is a place to start and learn from. Gold Diamond, 1974. And we end this article with Vargas 2022 summarizing Skinner, suggests that a culture increases its survival when it is sensitive to collateral and deferred effects. The satisfaction of those who experience intervention are the field's collateral effects. It is an incorporation of the cultural preferences of others that will help bolster the acceptance of applied behavior analysis and solidify its survival. So now, once again, we're talking about that it is no longer an option. It is no longer, something that once again can be considered as a side topic. It is something that is now real. Demographics are changing. We're seeing now a much more diverse population with their clients. So, it is very important for us as practitioners, science practitioners who are doing research, to embrace this, because that's going to allow us to help our field, once again, move on and continue growing and establishing and getting more acceptance in this ever-growing and changing demographics that we're serving. Okay, so I hope this particular article, once again, was of interest to you and can help you understand a bit more the whole aspect of cultural responsiveness in the field of behavior analysis. I always talk about that sometimes it's not only good to understand that there's a problem in our field, but it's always, to me, I find so much value in articles like this where they give you solutions, right? They literally give you ideas that what are things that we could do to improve these particular deficits that we have with ourselves as practitioners, but also our field that is, once again, a growing and still young field. Okay, so once again, the name of this article is a summary of the recommendations to increase cultural responsiveness in the field of applied behavior analysis. Thank you, Sarah Christensen, for this phenomenal article. I'm going to put, once again, a link there for those that are interested. And as a reminder, for those that are wondering how can you be able to access these particular articles, you can do so by going to the BACB site. If you have an account through the BACB, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board website, there's a part there where you can be able to access journal articles. Maybe next time I might show you guys really quickly a brief training on how to do that. But that particular access is something that I really appreciate from the BACB, because it allows us to have access to articles so we can continually educating and learning more about this phenomenal field of behavior analysis. Once again, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, and make sure to share with your colleagues this content if you find it useful. Thank you so much, everybody. You all take care.